The valet parking attendant barely looked up when I handed him the keys to my 10-year-old Honda Civic. Behind me, a gleaming Tesla and a cherry red Porsche waited their turn, engines purring with the kind of confidence I'd forgotten how to fake. The Grand Meridian Hotel rose before me like a monument to everything I wasn't. Polished marble, gold accents, and windows that reflected back a version of myself I hardly recognized. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from. And if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. 25 years. That's how long it had been since I walked the halls of Westfield Academy, and judging by the luxury cars filling the circular drive, most of my classmates had done considerably better than the girl who used to eat lunch alone in the library. I smoothed down my simple black dress, the only formal outfit I owned that still fit, and checked my reflection in the hotel's massive glass doors. Sarah Chen stared back at me, 38 years old, tired around the eyes, wearing shoes from a discount store and carrying a purse I'd had since college. The woman in the reflection looked like someone who apologized for taking up space. Inside, the registration table buzzed with activity. A blonde woman in a designer pantsuit was laughing loudly with the volunteer, gesturing with manicured nails as she collected her name tag. I recognized her immediately. Brittany Morrison, now Brittany Morrison Hayes, according to her elaborate name tag that included multiple titles and what appeared to be her husband's company logo. "Next," called the volunteer, and I stepped forward. "Sarah Chen," I said quietly. The volunteer, a woman I didn't recognize, shuffled through the pre-printed badges with increasing confusion. Chen? I'm sorry, I don't see you here. Are you sure you registered?" Heat crept up my neck. Behind me, I could feel Brittany turning to watch the delay. "I did register, about 3 weeks ago, online." More shuffling, more uncomfortable silence. "Oh wait, here it is. Sorry, it was in the +1 pile by mistake." She handed me a badge that read simply Sarah Chen in plain black letters. No decorative border, no class year, no accomplishments listed underneath like the others I'd seen. "Thanks," I mumbled, pinning it to my dress as I moved away from the table. "Sarah Chen?" Brittany's voice carried that particular tone people use when they're pretending to be surprised, but really aren't. "Oh my goodness, I almost didn't recognize you. How long has it been?" I turned to face her, forcing a smile. "Hi Brittany, you look great." And she did. Everything about her screamed success, the kind of success that came with personal trainers, expensive stylists, and whatever confidence money could buy. Her name tag listed her as, quote, Chief Marketing Officer Morrison Hayes Enterprises, along with a small photo that looked professionally shot. "Thank you. I try to stay in shape. Pilates 3 times a week, you know how it is." Her eyes scanned me from head to toe with the practiced efficiency of someone appraising livestock. "And you look comfortable." The word hung in the air like a polite insult. Before I could respond, 2 more women joined our small circle. Jennifer Walsh and Amanda Foster, former cheerleaders who'd ruled the social hierarchy at Westfield with the kind of casual cruelty that seemed effortless. "Is that Sarah Chen?" Jennifer's voice pitched high with what sounded like delight but felt like something else entirely. "The girl who used to do everyone's homework." "Oh my God, yes!" Amanda clapped her hands together. "Sarah, we were just talking about you at the cocktail hour. Weren't we, Jen?" I doubted that very much, but I nodded politely. "All good things, I hope." "Of course." Brittany's laugh was a little too bright. "We were wondering what you ended up doing. I mean, after high school, you just sort of disappeared." The 3 of them stood there with expectant smiles, waiting for me to account for the last 25 years of my life. I could feel other former classmates beginning to notice our conversation, some drifting closer with the casual interest people have for minor spectacles. "I work for the government," I said simply. "Oh, how nice." Jennifer's tone suggested she found it anything but nice. "What department? Are you like a secretary or something?" "Administrative work," I replied, which wasn't entirely a lie. "That's steady," Amanda offered, the way people talk about jobs they'd never want for themselves. "Benefits are probably good, right? Government jobs are so secure." Brittany nodded sagely. "That's smart, actually, playing it safe. Not everyone can be an entrepreneur." She gestured to her name tag. I started my own consulting firm right after college. Now we've got offices in 12 cities. Wow, that's impressive, I said, because it was expected. Thank you. It's been a wild ride. The hours are insane, but when you're building something, the private jet makes the travel easier, though. She laughed as if owning a private jet was just another minor convenience, like having a good coffee maker. A small crowd had gathered now, drawn by the familiar dynamics of a high school reunion, the successful showing off, the less successful trying to disappear. I recognized faces from calculus class, from student government, from the drama club I'd briefly joined before realizing I was better suited to working behind the scenes. Sarah was always so smart, Jennifer announced to the group, her voice carrying across the hotel lobby. Remember how she used to tutor people? She probably saved half our class from failing chemistry. A few people laughed, the kind of laugh that acknowledged a shared memory while simultaneously dismissing its importance. I had tutored people, for free usually, because I genuinely enjoyed helping others understand complex concepts. At the time, I'd thought it made me useful. Now I realized it had made me invisible. She was going to change the world, Amanda added with mock wistfulness. Remember that speech she gave at graduation? Something about public service and making a difference? More laughter. Someone in the back called out, "Whatever happened to that, Sarah? Did you change the world?" The question hit like a small slap. I looked around at the circle of faces, some genuinely curious, others barely concealing their amusement. These were people who remembered me as the earnest girl with big dreams and modest means, the one who'd gotten good grades but never quite fit in, who'd talked about serving something bigger than herself while they'd talked about serving themselves. "Still working on it," I said quietly. "That's sweet," Brittany said, and the condescension in her voice was so thick I could almost touch it. "It's nice that you still have ideals." The word ideals came out like she was talking about an embarrassing childhood hobby I'd never quite outgrown. "We should get some photos," Jennifer suddenly announced, pulling out her phone. "For social media. Everyone's gonna want to see this." Before I could object, I found myself being arranged into a group photo, positioned slightly behind the others, in a way that felt deliberate. As Jennifer snapped pictures, I heard her murmur to Amanda, "This is perfect. Look how different everyone looks." The implication was clear. While they'd all grown into their success, polished and perfected, I'd simply grown older. As the group began to disperse, heading toward the main ballroom where dinner was being served, I caught fragments of conversation that weren't meant for my ears. Always knew she'd end up in some boring government job. Remember how seriously she took everything? Like she thought she was going to be president or something. My assistant makes more than most government workers. I stood there for a moment, watching them walk away in their designer clothes and expensive jewelry, their laughter echoing off the marble walls. 25 years ago, I'd given a graduation speech about choosing service over self-interest, about using our privileges and education to make the world better, rather than just ourselves richer. At 18, I'd meant every word. Now, at 38, standing alone in a hotel lobby while my former classmates went off to enjoy their success, I wondered if they'd been right all along. Maybe idealism was just another word for naivete. Maybe I really had wasted my potential on dreams that didn't pay well. I made my way toward the ballroom, past displays of class photos and achievement boards celebrating the various accomplishments of Westfield Academy alumni. I noticed my name wasn't on any of them. Inside, the dinner was already underway. Round tables filled the room, each one seemingly populated by different versions of success. I found my assigned seat at table 12, tucked in the back corner near the kitchen doors. My table mates were polite enough. A few people I vaguely remembered, making small talk about mortgages and children and vacation destinations I'd never be able to afford. From across the room, I could see Brittany holding court at what was obviously the VIP table, regaling her audience with what appeared to be a very animated story. Jennifer and Amanda flanked her like backup singers, laughing at all the right moments. During the awards presentation, they called out various classmates who'd achieved notable success. Brittany received recognition for entrepreneurial excellence. Jennifer was honored for her work in pharmaceutical sales. Amanda got an award for community leadership that seemed to involve organizing charity galas for causes I'd never heard of. When they asked if anyone had anything to share about their experiences since graduation, Brittany stood up. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now, back to where we left off. I just want to say, she began, her voice carrying easily across the room, that Westfield Academy taught us to dream big and work hard. And I think tonight proves that those lessons stuck. We've got CEOs, doctors, lawyers, successful entrepreneurs. It's amazing what our class has accomplished. Applause filled the room. She was right, of course. Looking around, I could see the evidence of their success everywhere. In their clothes, their confidence, their casual mentions of vacation homes and investment portfolios. As the evening wound down, I slipped out quietly. No one noticed me leave, just like no one had really noticed me arrive. In the parking lot, I waited for the valet to bring my modest Honda, while luxury cars pulled up one after another for the other guests. The drive home to my small apartment took me past the places that had shaped my younger self. The library where I'd spent countless hours. The community center where I'd volunteered. The modest neighborhood where I'd grown up believing that success was measured by how much good you could do rather than how much money you could make. 25 years later, sitting in my car outside my apartment building, I wondered if they'd been right about me all along. Maybe I really was just the girl who'd confused idealism with intelligence, who'd chosen a path that led nowhere anyone wanted to follow. Maybe Sarah Chen really had disappeared after high school, and the woman who'd attended the reunion tonight was just a pale echo of dreams that had never quite come true. My apartment felt smaller than usual when I returned from the reunion. The single bedroom, cramped kitchen, and living room that doubled as my home office suddenly seemed like evidence of everything Brittany and her friends had implied about my life. I sat on my worn couch, still in my discount store dress, and stared at the stack of mail on my coffee table. Bills, junk mail. And underneath it all, a manila envelope with a familiar seal that made my pulse quicken. Department of Defense. Classification, eyes only. I broke the seal and pulled out the contents. A mission briefing that would have made Jennifer's pharmaceutical sales awards look like participation trophies. Operation Sandstorm. Northern Afghanistan. Asset extraction under hostile fire. Successful completion resulting in the safe evacuation of 12 American civilians and 14 Afghan nationals who had assisted coalition forces. The recommendation letter was signed by General Patricia Hawkins herself. Colonel Chen's tactical brilliance and unwavering courage under extreme duress exemplify the highest standards of military leadership. Her actions during Operation Sandstorm directly saved 26 lives and prevented a significant intelligence breach that could have compromised ongoing operations throughout the region. I set the papers aside and walked to my bedroom closet. Behind the few civilian clothes I owned, pushed to the very back, hung a uniform that told a different story than the one my classmates had written for me tonight. The silver eagles on the collar caught the light as I touched them gently. Colonel Sarah Chen, United States Army Special Operations Command. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. The caller ID showed a number I recognized immediately. Secure line, Pentagon. Chen here, I answered. Colonel, this is Captain Rodriguez from SOCOM Operations Center. We have a situation developing that requires your immediate attention. I walked to my kitchen while he spoke, opening the refrigerator that contained little more than leftover takeout and energy drinks. The contrast between my humble living situation and the weight of the conversation wasn't lost on me. What's the nature of the situation, Captain? Intelligence intercepts suggest a coordinated terrorist cell is planning an attack on American soil. Multiple targets, civilian populations. We've identified the cell leader as Hassan al-Mansuri, someone you encountered during Operation Nightfall in 2019. My blood went cold. Al-Mansuri. I remembered him well. A brilliant, ruthless operative who'd escaped our net in Syria by sacrificing his own men as decoys. The kind of enemy who made personal vendettas out of professional defeats. Timeline? I asked. 72 hours, ma'am, maybe less. The President has authorized a joint task force, and Central Command specifically requested you to lead the tactical response team. Your expertise with al-Mansuri's methods and your clearance level make you the logical choice. I looked around my modest apartment, the peeling paint on the walls, the secondhand furniture, the life I'd built in the shadows. Tomorrow morning, Brittany Morrison Hayes would probably post photos from the reunion on social media, tagged with captions about catching up with old friends, and subtle digs about how some people had settled for ordinary lives. She had no idea that while she was building her consulting empire, I'd been building something else entirely. While she was earning her MBA, I'd been earning the respect of generals and the trust of presidents. While she was closing deals, I'd been preventing international incidents that would never make the news. "Colonel, are you there?" "Yes, Captain." "I'll need transport to Langley within 6 hours. Have my team assembled and briefed." "And Captain?" "Yes, ma'am?" "This stays compartmentalized. Full operational security protocols." "Understood, Colonel." I hung up and walked to my living room, kneeling beside an unremarkable wooden chest that served as my coffee table. Inside, beneath a layer of photo albums and old books, was a laptop that looked ordinary but contained security protocols that would make most Fortune 500 companies envious. As it powered up, facial recognition software scanned my features and cross-referenced them with biometric data stored in classified databases. The screen flickered to life, displaying a secured desktop that existed in a parallel universe from my civilian life. Encrypted communications from operatives in 14 countries. Intelligence briefings that would reshape foreign policy if they ever became public. Mission reports from operations that had prevented 3 separate terrorist attacks in the past 18 months alone. And in the corner of the screen, a small notification that made me smile despite the circumstances. Commendation approved. Distinguished Service Cross for actions during Operation Sandstorm. The Distinguished Service Cross, the nation's second highest military honor, awarded only for extraordinary heroism in combat. I'd be the first Asian American woman to receive it for special operations work. The ceremony was scheduled for next week at the Pentagon, with the Secretary of Defense presiding. High-ranking officials from 5 different agencies would be in attendance, the kind of event that usually made national news. But it wouldn't make national news, because everything I did existed in the classified world where heroes didn't get headlines. I opened another secure file, my personnel record. 20 years of service. From second lieutenant fresh out of West Point to full colonel commanding some of the military's most sensitive operations. Languages: Mandarin, Arabic, Farsi, Pashto. Specializations: counterterrorism, strategic intelligence, high-value asset extraction. Combat deployments: Iraq, 2008, 2009. Afghanistan, 2012, 2013, 2016, 2017, 2020, 2021. Syria, 2019. Somalia, 2018. And a dozen other locations that didn't officially exist in any public record. Citations and commendations filled 3 pages: Bronze Star, Silver Star, Purple Heart from that IED blast outside Fallujah that left me with a barely visible scar along my hairline, hidden now beneath makeup that Brittany had probably assumed was trying to cover signs of aging rather than shrapnel marks. Leadership positions that would have impressed even my success-obsessed classmates if they'd had the security clearance to know about them. Commander of Task Force Phoenix, the Joint Special Operations Unit responsible for dismantling terrorist financial networks across 3 continents. Senior Military Advisor to the National Security Council during the crisis in Eastern Europe. Primary liaison between SOCOM and the CIA for operations in the Middle East. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Walsh. "So great seeing you tonight. Hope government work is treating you well." Quote, I stared at the message for a long moment, then set the phone aside without responding. Another notification appeared on my secure laptop, an encrypted message from General Hawkins herself. "Sarah, I know you value your privacy, but it's time the country knew what kind of officer we have serving in the shadows. The DSC ceremony next week will be a closed affair, but I'm recommending you for promotion to Brigadier General, 1 star, with your choice of commands. You've earned it 10 times over. We'll discuss when you return from handling the Al-Mansouri situation. Stay safe out there. Patricia. Brigadier General. 1 star away from the rarefied air, where military leaders became household names, where their opinions shaped policy and their presence commanded respect from presidents and prime ministers. I closed the laptop and walked to my bathroom mirror. The woman looking back at me was the same one who'd been dismissed and pitied just hours earlier. Same tired eyes, same discount store dress, same appearance of someone who'd settled for less. But appearances, I'd learned over 20 years of intelligence work, were the most powerful weapons of all. My reflection didn't show the calluses on my hands from rappelling down helicopter ropes in the dead of night. It didn't reveal the mental scars from making life-and-death decisions that affected global security. It didn't display the respect I commanded from some of the most powerful people in the world. It just showed Sarah Chen, the quiet girl who'd disappeared after high school. Tomorrow, I would disappear again. Not into obscurity, but into the classified world where I belonged, where my skills mattered more than my wardrobe, and my courage counted more than my car. But tonight, for just a few more hours, I was content to let them think they knew my story. My phone rang again, the secure line. Colonel Chen. Ma'am, this is Major Thompson from your tactical team. We've received additional intelligence on the Al-Mansouri cell. The situation has escalated. We need you in Washington immediately. I looked around my small apartment one last time. In 12 hours, I'd be in a situation room at the Pentagon, briefing cabinet-level officials on a terrorist threat that could reshape American foreign policy. In 24 hours, I'd be leading a team of elite operatives against one of the most dangerous men in the world. In 48 hours, Brittany Morrison Hayes would probably still be posting reunion photos, blissfully unaware that while she was networking at cocktail parties, some of her former classmates were busy preventing the kind of attacks that could end cocktail parties forever. I'm on my way, Major. As I packed my civilian clothes into a small overnight bag, I caught sight of the reunion program on my kitchen counter. My name wasn't listed anywhere in it, not in the notable achievements section, not in the class updates, not even in the We Remember memorial page. For 25 years, I'd been invisible to these people. Soon they would understand exactly how much power invisibility could hold. The emergency briefing at Langley had taken longer than expected. By the time I emerged from the classified discussions about Al-Mansouri's network, it was already Saturday evening. The terrorist threat was contained for now, but required my presence at a joint task force meeting Sunday morning at the Pentagon, which meant I had one night before disappearing back into the classified world for what could be weeks or months. I was walking through the Pentagon parking garage toward my government-issued sedan when my phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer Walsh. Sarah! Completely forgot to mention, we're having an informal gathering tomorrow at Brittany's Country Club. Just cocktails and catching up. You should totally come. 6 p.m. at Oakwood Hills Golf Club. Another message followed immediately. Would love to hear more about your government work. Brittany was saying how nice it is that you found something stable. I stared at the messages for a long moment. Oakwood Hills Golf Club. I knew it well. Not as a member, but as a location I'd surveilled 3 years ago when a defense contractor suspected of selling classified information to foreign agents held his daughter's wedding there. We'd had snipers positioned on the adjacent hills and electronic surveillance equipment disguised as catering equipment. Now Brittany Morrison Hayes was hosting cocktails there, probably eager to continue showcasing her success while patronizing mine. My phone rang. General Hawkins. Sarah, change of plans. The Al-Mansouri situation requires immediate cabinet-level briefing. Can you be back at the Pentagon by 1,900 hours tomorrow? I checked my watch. That would put me at the Pentagon at 7 p.m., right around the time Brittany's little gathering would be winding down. General, what's the transportation situation? Full military escort. Helicopter pickup from your location. This has Priority 1 clearance from the Secretary of Defense himself. An idea began forming. A terrible, wonderful idea that would probably violate a dozen protocols about operational security and maintaining cover. General, I need to make a brief stop before reporting to the Pentagon. Personal matter that requires closure before I can fully focus on the mission. A pause. How brief, Colonel? 30 minutes, maximum. Location? Oakwood Hills Golf Club in Virginia. Another pause, longer this time. Sarah, that's unusual. But given your service record and the importance of this mission, I'll authorize it. You'll have a full military escort. Dress blues required for the Pentagon briefing anyway. Thank you, General. Sarah? Whatever this personal matter is, make it count. Sunday evening, I stood in my apartment bathroom, adjusting my dress blue uniform for the third time. The dark navy fabric was immaculate, pressed to razor-sharp creases. The silver eagles on my collar caught the light, flanked by ribbons that told the story of 20 years in service to my country. Bronze Star Medal with Valor device. Silver Star. Purple Heart. Combat Infantryman Badge. Master Parachutist Badge. Special Forces Tab. Ranger Tab. And at the center, the distinctive unit insignia that marked me as Special Operations Command. My name tape read simply, Chen. Below it, U.S. Army in stark black letters. I looked nothing like the woman who'd attended the reunion 24 hours earlier. The drive to Oakwood Hills took me through Virginia countryside that looked deceptively peaceful in the golden hour light. My military escort, 2 black SUVs with discreet government plates, maintained formation behind me as we approached the country club. As we pulled into the circular drive, I could see the gathering through the club's floor-to-ceiling windows. About 30 people from Westfield Academy, cocktails in hand, laughing and mingling on the terrace overlooking the 18th green. Brittany stood at the center of it all, gesturing animatedly while telling what appeared to be another story about her business success. Jennifer and Amanda flanked her as usual, playing their familiar roles as admirers and enablers. I sat in my car for a moment, watching them through the window. They looked so certain of their world, so comfortable in their assumptions about success and failure, about who mattered and who didn't. My phone buzzed with a text from Jennifer. "Where are you? Everyone's asking about you. Can't wait to hear about your government job." Quote, the laughing emoji told me everything I needed to know about the tone of their earlier conversations. I checked my watch, 6:47 p.m. The Pentagon briefing was at 7 p.m. sharp, which meant my helicopter would arrive in exactly 13 minutes. Perfect timing. I stepped out of my sedan and walked toward the country club entrance. The doorman, a distinguished older gentleman in a burgundy blazer, took one look at my uniform and snapped to attention. "Good evening, Colonel. How may we assist you?" "I'm here for the Westfield Academy gathering, terrace level." "Of course, ma'am. Right this way." Inside the club, conversation stopped as I walked through the main dining room toward the terrace doors. Other patrons, wealthy retirees and young professionals, turned to watch the Army officer in dress blues moving with quiet purpose through their exclusive domain. I pushed open the terrace doors and stepped outside. The effect was immediate and total. Jennifer saw me first. Her wine glass froze halfway to her lips, her eyes widening as she took in the uniform, the ribbons, the unmistakable bearing of a senior military officer. Amanda noticed Jennifer's expression and turned to follow her gaze. Her mouth fell open. One by one, conversations died as 30-some former classmates realized that the quiet government worker they'd dismissed the night before was standing among them in full military dress uniform. Brittany was still mid-sentence when the silence reached her, and that's why I always tell my clients that networking is everything. You never know who might actually be in port. She turned and saw me. For the first time in our entire shared history, from middle school through last night, Brittany Morrison Hayes was speechless. I didn't announce myself, didn't make a grand entrance speech. I simply walked onto the terrace and nodded politely to the group. "Evening, everyone. Sorry I'm late." My voice carried the quiet authority that came from commanding rooms full of generals and cabinet secretaries, from giving orders that moved ships and satellites and special forces teams across 3 continents. Jennifer found her voice first, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Sarah, what? I mean, you're Army," I said simply. "Colonel, United States Army Special Operations Command." The silence stretched like a held breath. 30 successful people who'd spent their careers commanding boardrooms and closing deals suddenly found themselves in the presence of someone who commanded something entirely different. A man I vaguely remembered from calculus class, Tom Bradley, according to his name tag, cleared his throat. Colonel? Like, full colonel. That's correct. How long? Amanda's question trailed off. 20 years active duty, West Point, class of 2003. More silence. I could see them doing the math, recalculating everything they thought they knew about the quiet girl from high school. Brittany finally recovered enough to speak, though her usual confidence had evaporated. But last night you said you did administrative work. I do. I administer counter-terrorism operations for the Department of Defense. In the distance, I could hear it starting, the low thrum of rotor blades approaching from the east, right on schedule. Jennifer looked around nervously. Is that a helicopter? The sound grew louder, unmistakable now. Several people stepped toward the edge of the terrace, looking up at the sky. Probably just traffic, Brittany said, but her voice lacked its usual certainty. The helicopter crested the tree line, a sleek military aircraft with U.S. Army marked clearly on its sides. It circled the golf course once, then began its descent toward the 18th green. Cocktail glasses trembled in shaking hands. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." The aircraft touched down with precision on the fairway. Its rotor was sending napkins and programs flying across the terrace. The side door opened and a figure emerged. Major Thompson from my tactical team, also in dress blues, moving with the purposeful stride of a combat veteran. He walked across the green, up the steps to the terrace, and stopped directly in front of me. Without hesitation, he snapped to attention and delivered a crisp military salute. "Colonel Chen, ma'am. Pentagon Command requests your immediate presence for emergency cabinet briefing. The Al-Mansuri situation has escalated. We are going for extraction." I returned his salute, my movements automatic after 20 years of military protocol. "Understood, Major. Status of the task force?" "Assembled and ready for your command, ma'am. The Secretary of Defense is standing by." Behind me, I could hear someone drop their glass. The sound of crystal shattering on stone seemed unnaturally loud against the helicopter's idling rotors. I turned back to the group of my former classmates. 30 faces stared back at me with expressions ranging from shock to awe to something that might have been fear. These were people accustomed to being the most important person in their respective rooms. CEOs, lawyers, entrepreneurs, who commanded respect through wealth and position. None of them had ever seen real authority before. "I have to go," I said simply. "National security matter." I started toward the helicopter, then paused and turned back to Brittany. "Thank you for hosting. It was illuminating." As I walked across the fairway toward the waiting aircraft, I could hear the whispered conversations starting behind me. "Did you see those ribbons? Special operations? That's like elite forces, right? Cabinet briefing. Jesus Christ, who is she? The Secretary of Defense? She reports to the Secretary of Defense?" I reached the helicopter and accepted the flight helmet Major Thompson offered. Before climbing aboard, I looked back one last time at the terrace. 30 people stood frozen at the railing, watching in absolute silence as their fundamental assumptions about success, importance, and power were rewritten in real time. Brittany Morrison Hayes, CEO and entrepreneur, stood among them looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. As the helicopter lifted off, carrying me toward a meeting that would help shape American foreign policy, I caught a glimpse of my former classmates growing smaller below. For 25 years, they'd thought they knew who mattered. Tonight, they'd learned how wrong they could be. The Pentagon briefing room fell silent as I finished outlining the tactical response to the Al-Mansuri threat. Secretary of Defense Williams leaned back in his chair, studying the intelligence reports spread across the mahogany table. "Outstanding work, Colonel Chen. Your strategic assessment just prevented what could have been the worst terrorist attack on American soil since 9/11. Around the table, cabinet-level officials nodded their agreement. The Director of National Intelligence, the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs, the Secretary of Homeland Security, all of them treating my analysis as gospel truth. 3 hours earlier, these same people had been strangers to my former classmates. Names in newspapers, faces on television, the kind of high-level officials that people like Brittany Morrison Hayes only dreamed of having access to. Colonel, the DNI said, your personal knowledge of Al-Mansouri's psychological profile was the key factor in predicting his next move. Without your insight, we'd still be chasing shadows. As the meeting concluded and officials filed out, Secretary Williams approached me privately. Sarah, I need to ask you something. General Hawkins mentioned you made an unusual stop before tonight's briefing. Is everything all right? I hesitated. How do you explain to the Secretary of Defense that you'd just shattered your high school classmates' perception of reality? Personal matter, sir. Something I needed to put to rest before focusing completely on the mission. He studied my face for a moment. Whatever it was, it seems to have worked. You were laser-focused tonight. Get some rest. We'll need you sharp for the follow-up operations. But rest would have to wait. My phone had been buzzing incessantly during the briefing, and now, as I walked to my Pentagon office, I saw why. 47 missed calls, over 200 text messages, and somehow, impossibly, my personal phone number was being shared by people who shouldn't have had it. The first text was from Jennifer Walsh. Sarah, I can't believe what just happened. Please call me, we need to talk. Amanda Foster. Oh my God, Sarah. You're like actually famous. My husband says you're in the news. Tom Bradley. Holy shit, Sarah. You're all over Twitter. Hashtag Colonel Chen is trending. That made me stop walking. I opened Twitter on my personal phone, something I rarely used, and saw my name attached to hundreds of posts. Someone had filmed the helicopter landing at the golf course. The video was grainy, shot through the country club's windows, but it clearly showed Major Thompson's salute and my response. The audio was mostly rotor noise, but you could make out fragments. Colonel Chen, Pentagon Command, cabinet briefing. Within hours, the internet had done what the internet does best. It had investigated. Military aviation enthusiasts had identified the helicopter model and traced its registration to a Special Operations Transport Unit. Defense bloggers had cross-referenced the timing with public Pentagon schedules and concluded that a high-level emergency briefing had taken place Sunday night. And then someone had connected the dots to Westfield Academy's reunion weekend. At MilSpouse 2024, guys, I think Colonel Chen went to high school with my cousin. She said everyone thought she was a nobody. Plot twist of the century. At Defense Watch, sources confirm Colonel Sarah Chen attended an emergency cabinet briefing Sunday night. Helicopter extraction from civilian locations unprecedented for a non-combat situation. At Reunion Drama, thread, what happens when your unsuccessful classmate turns out to be a Pentagon insider? This is wild. 1/47. The thread had been retweeted over 10,000 times. But it was the next series of messages that made my blood run cold. Brittany Morrison Hayes had sent me 12 texts, each more desperate than the last. Sarah, my phone hasn't stopped ringing. Reporters are calling my office. The Washington Post wants to interview me about you. What should I say? CNN reached out to the country club. They want security footage. Sarah, please respond. This is getting out of control. My business partner is asking questions. This is affecting my company. Sarah, I think I made a mistake. We need to talk, please. The final message had arrived 20 minutes ago. Sarah, there's something I never told you about high school, about why you never got certain opportunities. Please call me. It's important. I stared at that last message for a long time. What opportunities? What was she talking about? My phone rang. General Hawkins. Sarah, we have a problem. The media attention from tonight is compromising your operational security. I need you to come in first thing tomorrow morning. Understood, General. What's the extent of the exposure? Your name is attached to speculation about tonight's briefing. Nothing classified has been revealed, but your cover as a low-profile operative is blown. We may need to consider reassignment. After I hung up, I sat in my Pentagon office, staring at intelligence reports that suddenly seemed less important than the growing mystery of my own past. I called Jennifer Walsh. Sarah, she answered on the first ring. Oh my God, I still can't believe. Jennifer, what did Brittany mean about opportunities in high school? What opportunities? A long pause. Sarah, maybe you should talk to Brittany about this. I'm talking to you. What opportunities? Another pause, then a sigh. Do you remember senior year? When did you apply for that summer internship at Senator Richardson's office? I remembered. It had been a competitive program. Only 2 students from the entire state would be selected for internships with Virginia's senior senator. I had worked for months on my application, written essays about public service, gotten recommendation letters from 3 teachers. You didn't get it, Jennifer continued quietly. I remember. They said my application was impressive, but they went with candidates who had more diverse backgrounds. Sarah, that's not what happened. My stomach dropped. What do you mean? Brittany's father, he was a major donor to Richardson's campaigns, like 6-figure major, when Brittany decided she wanted that internship. She got my spot. It wasn't supposed to be your spot. You actually got it. Senator Richardson's office called the school to confirm your selection, but then… Jennifer's voice trailed off. But then what? Brittany's father made some calls, said there had been a mistake in the evaluation process, suggested they review the applications more carefully. Next thing we knew, Brittany was going to Washington for the summer. I closed my eyes, remembering how devastated I'd been. That internship would have opened doors, created connections, launched a political career that could have complemented my military ambitions. Who else knew about this? Sarah, I can't. Who else knew? A longer pause. Amanda knew. Tom knew. A few others. We were sworn to secrecy. Brittany said it would ruin everything if word got out that her family had pulled strings. And you all just went along with it? We were 18, Sarah. Brittany was our friend. Her family had money, influence. We thought it was just how the world worked. I hung up and immediately called Amanda Foster. Sarah, oh thank God you called. Tell me about the National Merit Scholarship. Silence. Amanda, tell me about the National Merit Scholarship. Who told you about that? Just tell me. Sarah, it was 25 years ago. Does it really matter now? It matters to me. Another long pause. You were supposed to be named a National Merit finalist. Your PSAT scores were in the top 1% statewide. But the school? They said there was an error in your application, a discrepancy in your academic record. What kind of discrepancy? They said you'd been caught cheating in AP chemistry, that it disqualified you from the scholarship program. I'd never cheated on anything in my life. My integrity had been questioned exactly once in high school, during a test where Brittany Morrison had been caught with notes written on her hand and claimed I'd given them to her. The incident had been investigated and dismissed when 3 other students confirmed they'd seen Brittany writing the notes herself before class started. But the damage was done, Amanda continued. Even though you were cleared, the scholarship committee said any academic integrity investigation, even one that was resolved, created doubt about your character. And Brittany? Brittany got the scholarship instead, as the alternate candidate. I hung up and called Tom Bradley. Sarah! Holy shit, I can't believe you're actually… West Point nomination. Tom's excitement died immediately. What about it? Tell me what happened with my West Point nomination. Sarah, why are you asking about this stuff? That was decades ago. Because apparently everyone knew things that I didn't. So tell me what happened. You know what happened. Congressman Walsh said your application was strong, but he went with candidates who had more leadership experience. Tom. Sarah, I really think you should. Tom, I just spent the evening briefing the Secretary of Defense on a counterterrorism operation that could affect global security. I think I can handle whatever you have to tell me about high school politics. A long pause. Brittany's family, they had connections with Congressman Walsh, major campaign donors. When she decided she wanted to go to West Point. I was already selected, wasn't I? Preliminary selection, yeah. But then Walsh's office called and said they were reconsidering all the applications, looking for candidates with stronger leadership profiles. And Brittany had stronger leadership? Brittany was student body president. Because I was disqualified from running. Sarah, Because someone spread rumors that I was using my tutoring sessions to get advanced copies of tests. Those rumors were never proven. But they were enough to get me removed from the student government ballot. Silence. Tom, who started those rumors? Sarah, please don't make me. Who started them? Brittany. I hung up and sat in my Pentagon office, surrounded by classified reports about international terrorism, while the real conspiracy that had shaped my life finally came into focus. For 25 years, I'd believed that I was someone who'd overcome setbacks and found success despite early disappointments. Now I was learning that those setbacks hadn't been setbacks at all. They'd been sabotage. Systematic, deliberate sabotage designed to clear the path for Brittany Morrison's ambitions, carried out by someone who'd smiled to my face while stealing my future from behind my back. The irony was almost unbearable. While Brittany had been manipulating high school politics to steal opportunities I'd earned, I'd been finding other paths to serve my country. Paths that had led me to briefing rooms with cabinet secretaries and operational commands that protected millions of American lives. She'd stolen my past, but she'd inadvertently driven me toward a future she could never reach. My phone buzzed with another text from Brittany. Sarah, please. There are things you don't understand, things I need to explain. Meet me tomorrow, I'll tell you everything. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I began typing my response. I met Brittany Morrison Hayes at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History, specifically in the Military History Wing, where my Bronze Star citation was displayed alongside other recipients from Operation Iraqi Freedom. The irony of the location wasn't lost on either of us. She arrived 30 minutes late, looking nothing like the polished executive who'd commanded attention at the reunion. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her makeup minimal, her designer clothes replaced by jeans and a Georgetown University sweatshirt that looked like it hadn't seen daylight in years. "Thank you for meeting me," she said quietly, avoiding eye contact. I gestured toward a bench facing the display case containing artifacts from Afghanistan, the same region where I'd earned the Silver Star she'd never known about. "You said there were things I needed to understand." Brittany sat down heavily, her usual confident posture replaced by something that looked like defeat. "I've been getting calls all morning. Reporters, investigators, people asking questions about our high school years." "What kind of investigators?" "FBI, apparently. Something about security clearance reviews and potential fraud in government applications." She looked at me for the first time. "Sarah, I think my past is catching up with me." The FBI involvement didn't surprise me. When a senior military officer's cover gets blown and reveals potential security breaches in their background investigation, the Bureau takes it seriously. If they'd discovered discrepancies between my actual high school record and what had been reported during my clearance investigations, heads would roll. "Tell me about the scholarship applications," I said. Brittany's hands twisted in her lap. "It started with the Senator Richardson internship. My father had donated heavily to his campaigns, and when I mentioned wanting a political career, he made some calls. But then we found out you'd already been selected." "So you had me removed." "My father had me removed. He said it was just politics, that's how the world worked. That your family didn't have the connections to fight back, so why should you get opportunities that his donations had essentially funded?" The casual cruelty of it was breathtaking. Reduce a teenager's dreams to a transaction, a commodity that could be bought and sold by adults with enough money and influence. "What about the National Merit Scholarship?" "That was me." Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I knew you'd scored higher on the PSAT. I knew you deserved it. But I also knew that scholarship was my only path to an Ivy League school. My parents had money, but not enough for Stanford without aid. So you manufactured a cheating scandal. I convinced Mrs. Patterson that you'd been helping other students too much during tutoring sessions, that it crossed the line into academic dishonesty. She reported it to the scholarship committee as a character concern. Mrs. Patterson, our AP chemistry teacher, a woman who'd written one of my recommendation letters but had somehow been convinced that my enthusiasm for helping struggling classmates was actually evidence of poor character. And West Point? That was the hardest one. Brittany was crying now, tears she'd been holding back for 25 years. "I knew how much you wanted to serve. I knew it was your dream." But I also knew that if you got into West Point, you'd become someone I could never compete with. So you started rumors about me cheating. I convinced people you were getting test answers through your tutoring sessions, that you were using your access to help certain students in exchange for information about upcoming exams. It wasn't true, but it was plausible enough that Congressman Walsh's office decided to reconsider all the nominations. I sat in silence, watching tourists walk past displays of military valor while listening to confessions of civilian cowardice. Why, I finally asked, why not just compete fairly? Why not try to be better instead of making me worse? Because I couldn't be better than you, the admission came out like a sob. In anything that actually mattered, you were always going to win. Smarter, more principled, more dedicated. The only way I could succeed was to make sure you couldn't. My phone buzzed with a call from General Hawkins. I let it go to voicemail, but the notification reminded me of something important. Brittany, my security clearance investigation would have uncovered all of this. Every scholarship, every award, every opportunity from high school gets verified. How is it possible that the FBI missed systematic fraud in my academic record? She looked confused. What do you mean? When someone applies for top-secret clearance, investigators interview everyone. Teachers, classmates, neighbors. They would have discovered that my scholarship rejections were based on false allegations. But they never interviewed me, or Amanda, or Jennifer. Nobody from high school ever contacted us about you. That was impossible. I'd undergone 3 separate background investigations over the past 20 years, each more thorough than the last. Someone should have interviewed my high school classmates. Unless... I pulled out my phone and called the Pentagon's Personnel Security Division. Colonel Chen here. I need to review my background investigation files immediately. All 3 clearance levels. Ma'am, those files are classified and this is a potential security breach involving falsified records. I'm ordering an immediate review under emergency protocols. 20 minutes later, I was staring at documents that made Brittany's teenage sabotage look like child's play. Someone had falsified my entire background investigation. The FBI interviews that should have revealed the scholarship frauds had never happened. Instead, the investigation files contained fabricated reports claiming that agents had interviewed dozens of people who confirmed my outstanding character and academic achievements. The investigator's signature belonged to Special Agent Michael Reeves, who, according to the personnel database, had died in a car accident 15 years ago, 3 years before my first clearance investigation had supposedly been completed. Sarah, Brittany was reading over my shoulder. What does this mean? It meant that someone with access to classified FBI databases had been protecting me for decades. Someone who'd known about the high school sabotage and had covered it up to ensure my military career could proceed without hindrance. My phone rang, General Hawkins again. Sarah, where are you? We need to talk, now. General, I'm reviewing some irregularities in my background. Sarah, get to my office immediately, and bring whoever you're with. An hour later, Brittany and I sat in General Hawkins' Pentagon office while she explained something that seemed impossible. Sarah, your father never worked for the State Department. I stared at her. What do you mean? He was a cultural attaché, posted in Beijing, Seoul, Manila. He was CIA, deep cover operative for 30 years. His diplomatic postings were for intelligence operations throughout Southeast Asia. The room seemed to tilt. My father, the quiet man who'd taught me Mandarin and encouraged my interest in international relations, had been a spy. He died in the line of duty in 2009. Not a heart attack, as you were told. He was assassinated in Cambodia while running an operation that prevented a terrorist attack on American naval assets in the South China Sea. Brittany was staring at me with growing understanding. Sarah, if your father was CIA, then he had access to FBI databases, General Hawkins confirmed. We believe that before his death, he discovered what had happened to you in high school. He spent years quietly correcting the record, ensuring that your background investigations would support the military career you deserved. But he never told me. He couldn't. Revealing his true identity would have compromised ongoing operations and put other assets at risk. But he also couldn't let his daughter's future be destroyed by teenage politics. I thought about all the times my father had asked about my military service, the quiet pride in his eyes when I'd been promoted, the way he'd always seemed to know more about my assignments than I'd told him. He was protecting you from the shadows, General Hawkins continued, making sure that Brittany's sabotage couldn't follow you into your adult life. Brittany was crying again. Sarah, I had no idea. I thought I'd just hurt you in high school. I didn't know it would affect your whole life. It didn't, I realized. My father made sure it didn't. He gave me the chance to succeed on my own merits. General Hawkins leaned forward. Sarah, there's something else. Your father left specific instructions in his classified will. If the truth about your high school years ever came to light, we were authorized to reveal his identity and his actions on your behalf. She handed me a sealed envelope marked with my name and my father's handwriting. Inside was a letter that explained everything. My dearest Sarah, it began. If you're reading this, then the shadows I've lived in have finally caught up with the light you deserve to live in. I discovered what was done to you during your senior year, and I couldn't let it stand. Not because you needed my help to succeed, you were always destined for greatness, but because I couldn't let someone else's dishonesty diminish the integrity you've shown your entire life. The letter detailed his investigation into the scholarship frauds, his careful manipulation of my background checks, his quiet pride in watching me overcome obstacles that should never have existed. You became everything I hoped you would be, not because of my interference, but in spite of the interference of others. You served with honor, led with courage, and proved that true character cannot be destroyed by false accusations. The letter concluded, "Live in the light, my daughter. You've spent enough time in shadows that were never meant to be yours." I looked up at Brittany, who was watching me with an expression I'd never seen before. Not envy or calculation, but something that might have been respect. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "Now you go live with what you've done," I said, "and I go live with what I've achieved in spite of it." General Hawkins stood. "Sarah, the Secretary of Defense has authorized me to offer you any assignment you want. Full bird colonel, your choice of commands. Or, if you prefer, we can arrange a promotion to brigadier general with a Pentagon posting." I thought about my father, spending decades in the shadows to protect American interests abroad. I thought about the terrorists I'd helped capture, the attacks I'd prevented, the lives I'd saved. "I want to go back to the field, General. There's still work to do." As Brittany and I left the Pentagon together, she stopped at the memorial wall where names of fallen intelligence officers were carved into black granite. "Is your father's name here?" "It can't be. His identity is still classified." She stood there for a long moment, then turned to me. "Sarah, I know I can never undo what I did. But I want you to know, watching you these past few days, seeing who you became, I wish I'd been brave enough to be your friend instead of your enemy." I looked at this woman who'd shaped my life in ways she'd never understood, who'd tried to steal my future and inadvertently driven me toward a destiny greater than either of us had imagined. "Brittany, you gave me something you never intended to." "What's that?" "You taught me that success isn't about beating other people. It's about becoming someone worthy of the opportunities you're given." 6 months later, I was back in Afghanistan leading a joint task force that dismantled the remainder of al-Mansouri's network. The operation saved countless lives and earned me the Distinguished Service Cross my father had never lived to see me receive. The ceremony was held at the White House, with the president himself presenting the award. Among the guests in the Rose Garden was a delegation from Westfield Academy, including Principal Harrow and Mrs. Patterson, who'd flown to Washington to watch their former student receive the nation's second highest military honor. Brittany Morrison Hayes wasn't there. She'd quietly shut down her consulting firm after the FBI investigation revealed irregularities in several government contracts her company had won through connections that traced back to her family's political influence. But Jennifer Walsh was there, along with Amanda Foster and Tom Bradley. They stood with tears in their eyes as the president spoke about courage, sacrifice, and the hidden heroes who serve in America's shadows. After the ceremony, as I walked through the White House gardens in my dress blues, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Congratulations, Colonel Chen, your father would be proud. You've honored his legacy and created your own. A friend in the shadows. I never learned who sent that message. In the intelligence world, some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. But I kept the message, along with my father's letter, as reminders that sometimes the people who shape our lives the most are the ones we never see coming, both the enemies who try to break us and the guardian angels who ensure we have the chance to prove that we can't be broken. The girl who'd been mocked at the class reunion was gone forever. In her place stood Colonel Sarah Chen, someone who'd learned that true success isn't measured by the opinions of others, but by the courage to serve something greater than yourself. And in a world full of shadows, that kind of light can never be dimmed. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.